Does everyone have a mic? All right, awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for joining, guys. On day one of Consensus, would like to just kick off this panel on decentralized modular infrastructure for DePIN. So I gave kind of the preview of what a decentralized tech stack looks like, and all of these guys are working on different components to make DePINs more decentralized and more capable. So I'd like to just start by having everyone introduce themselves and their project. Why don't we start with you, Sam?
Hey, everybody. My name's Sam Wang. Work at the Near Foundation, focusing mostly on the Near DA product. It's essentially the data availability layer that serves Near the L1 that we have tweaked and, in a way, exported to help scale roll-ups and other blockchains and other ecosystems.
Does this work? Yeah. James Friel, work on the business development team at Axelar. And for those that are unfamiliar, Axelar is a decentralized interoperability platform. So we're composing assets and contracts between disparate chains, helping applications scale.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin. I work on the graph at Edge and Node, one of the core developers there. I lead our BD and partnerships efforts. For those of you who don't know the graph, we're a decentralized data indexing network. You can also think of us as a decentralized compute network. We invented something called the subgraph, and these subgraphs are used in pretty much all DeFi applications around the world, enabling high volume queries. So if you have a front end that needs to query blockchain data, it's likely indexed by the graph.
And I'm Klimen. I'm one of the co-heads of the Filecoin Foundation. And Filecoin, for anybody who doesn't know, is a decentralized cloud storage platform that allows anybody to open up their hard drive space and store a little bit of data, allowing for an open source solution that can rival the cloud computing power of something like AWS or Google Cloud. And I'm so excited that we're here today, Larry. I thought it was a really good intro talk because I think that showing how all these pieces fit together is incredibly important. And that's one of the things that we're really into talking about these days at Filecoin is how much these pieces stack together to really create a vision of of an infrastructure network that's really owned by people again, which is pretty exciting.
Absolutely. You know, we've seen a lot of how these different layers and technology stack together in the DeFi context. Bringing this to DePIN is really going to transform how these applications are built, and the focus is for a lot of these companies, a lot of DePIN founders in the audience today. So, you know, we just talked a lot about how the projects on this panel contribute critical infrastructure to transmit, store, index, and bridge data across DApps. Would like to you guys to just go one layer deeper and explain why is it important for DePIN projects today to consider adding their technologies to their tech stacks? Maybe start with you, Sam, or whoever.
All right, I'm happy to take it. So for those that aren't familiar, just go a click deeper on Axelar. Most people are probably pretty familiar with bridges and the security issues that have kind of plagued this space. And so when you really look at the difference between bridges or general message passing infrastructure, the difficulty is at the verification layer, right? How are you coming to the conclusion that when you're passing that data and information, that it's, reliable? And so Axelar actually operates its own layer 1 blockchain built on the Cosmos SDK. So we inherit this permissionless validator set that needs to come to conclusion that any cross-chain message is valid. And that compares to when you look at the post-mortem from any of these large hacks that have happened on bridges, billions of dollars over the last few years, you have very small multi-sig centralized architecture that is serving as this middleware between very decentralized source chains and destination chains. And I give that context to say, it's very important when you look at the landscape that you just described of what the future looks like, that you can see that there are going to be disparate sets of data that exist on different chains. There are going to be different chains that focus on DePIN exclusively. There are going to be chains that have DePIN applications on Ethereum, Solana, and some of the more general ecosystems. And really, to realize that future, you need instant and safe composability of the data that exists between those ecosystems, right? That's how you get to the level of AI that you were describing. And so we need to be able to compose that. And in order to do that, you need the infrastructure that's providing the message passing between them to be as secure as the source and destination chains. And so some of the work that we're starting to do with C4E is another Cosmos app chain that's focused on DePIN. They're working on bringing carbon credits on chain, EV charging, NFTs, and their whole goal is to be able to distribute that and access liquidity two ways over Axelar. And so I think, extremely important for us to go from having these, disparate ecosystems to having a connected level of kind of Web3 DePIN is, work with people like Axelar that provide that level of security when it comes to interoperability.
Yeah, absolutely. So really establishing new primitives for how real-world assets can be transferred from chain to chain to create a more, multi-chain ecosystem.
Exactly.
Kevin, from the graphs perspective, you guys have also kind of established subgraphs as a new primitive for people to ingest, common types of data. How does that work in the DePIN context, from your perspective?
Sure. Yeah. So why subgraphs is, I think, the first question. Blockchains weren't really designed to be read optimized. They were more write optimized. So you can write data to a blockchain, and that scales pretty well. But when you want to store that data and you want to query it at human scale, it kind of starts to fall apart. And so this is why indexing is done today. And from the graph's perspective, indexing is actually a significant risk to the Web3 space centralizing. And so we saw that pretty early on, and that's how the graph protocol was born. We established product market fit just for those reasons alone. But then as we look into DePIN, to your question, the same use case really is, it hasn't changed much. As DePIN as a category grows, the need to query data, not just at human scale, but at the scale of devices, it'll also need a similar decentralized architecture. And we encourage all application developers to use the graph because it's open and it's decentralized. And what that means is we're not going to rug you 10 years from now. We're not going to jack up prices. You can join the network and leave the network. If you want to build open source and you want to have economies of scale, you should start on the graph.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in to say that I think that one of the things that we're sort of not talking about...
Can we turn up the volume on Megan's mic, please? Sorry.
And get closer? Okay. I think one of the things that we are not talking about is kind of the amazing opportunity that we have to use this emerging space of physical infrastructure networks, not even talking about decentralized ones, but just like the larger space that the amount of data and control that is happening with, that machines are making for themselves, that we have the opportunity to use that to kind of take back the internet as we know it. 90% of stored data was created in the last 2 years. We're turning into a society that creates a ton of data and is giving more and more control and autonomy to devices. And I think using that as our time to break open the walled gardens that have become the current centralized internet. I think that in this space we use the terms centralized and decentralized so often that they kind of become background noise. And it's easy to forget how powerful this is, that by leaning into decentralized physical infrastructure networks and looking at every layer of the stack and how we can make that something that is open, that is verifiable, that is owned by the people, we can truly take back the most powerful invention that we've created in the last 50 years, which is the internet.
Absolutely. Sam, what do you think from Nir's perspective?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple from Nir DA's perspective as a DA layer. For any blockchain, an elemental piece of what makes a blockchain is a DA layer. And I think what Nir DA brings to the table is we're super familiar, battle-tested, reliable, been around for almost 4 years, super cheap DA layer. So in a rollup centric world where the base layer is congested and expensive, and you're competing for block space down there, why not use a modular DA layer that can plug and play pretty easily, and something that's been proven to be fairly reliable. So I think the importance of like a partner like NearDA is fairly self-explanatory, and I think that's kind of the concept, or that's the core idea of the value that we are doing by taking a piece of the Near tech stack and seeing how it can help other ecosystems scale out.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this panel is called Modular Infrastructure for DePINs. We talked a lot about the infrastructure, but to Sam's point, I want to double click on the modularity piece, which also implies composability. Where do you guys think we are in the modularity kind of life cycle? It's been a hot topic in 2024, but maybe not as adopted yet. What's the path to seeing more DApps within DePIN and outside of DePIN even adopt this kind of modularity thesis?
Yeah, I think I've been really happy to see modularity as a narrative. As someone who came from the tech space before blockchains, specialization of technology services is an old concept. It just kind of makes sense when you think about it. Different components of the architecture, the more they specialize and interoperate with one another, the more you can experiment at like an atomic level. And so when you look at modular blockchains, it kind of just makes sense that we're here. I think it's early because we're just starting to talk about it. There are a lot of reference implementations from the earlier blockchains that are now getting, different pieces of them are getting picked up and forked and incorporated into new architectures. I find all that really exciting, and I think that as we all build forward, thinking about interoperating with different components, how we're specializing and really adding a lot of value there. I think it's going to be a combination of best-in-class like microservices or kind of modular components that can all come together seamlessly to kind of get us towards the best solution.
Absolutely. And from like a NearDA and Filecoin's perspective, it's interesting because you guys offer modular components which can also be aggregated into more of like an end-to-end solution. So how do you guys think about it? Like, you want people to adopt the entirety of your solutions, but you also offer the modular components like DA and compute on top and storage and compute on top. How do you guys think about modularity and playing nice versus selling the whole solution?
Well, I'll jump in first. Actually, just to even a little bit piggyback off of what Kevin just said, like I do think that we are sort of in the infancy of seeing these full solutions, like really seeing infrastructure networks that are actually being used with products at the end. Like, of course, there are really exciting emerging companies that are doing this, right? Like something built on the Filecoin stack is WeatherXM that is integrating sensors for weather data. I love that you used that as an example, Larry, in your earlier talk. But I think that we're all building towards the same bigger vision of the world, right? And so I think that the more we create a stack that works, the more we create the template for other people who want to build similar, stacks to come in and break out pieces and be modular with it. Like, of course, it's great if somebody builds a whole stack on Filecoin and can use Filecoin up and down, but we are not in this to create a protocol that's going to dominate everybody else. We're in it to create a protocol that is the best use case for whatever situation you're using. And so, we want to give examples of how you can use it for the whole stack, get real, real physical infrastructure networks, real things that are being connected that are using this open source stack all the way up and down. But, we also want people to modularly pull pieces out and use the thing that is best for their use case.
Yeah, like in one word, I would say modularity has led to a lot of mashups, and like mashups kind of as a corollary, it results in a lot of experimentation. So from NearDA's perspective, modularity has actually been introduced a really, really refreshing dynamic into the industry where previous competitors or projects who might not have had a reason to work together, now because of modular blockchain design, get to like tag team or work together on different projects. And so you get a lot of tier 1 teams working together that previously didn't have an excuse to. So for me, I think just like modularity is going to naturally lead to adoption because I think participants and actors will see that experimentation becomes cheaper, and if experimentation is cheaper, that should lead to more innovation. And with more innovative solutions, then observers will be like, this is probably the right path for us to all be pursuing. And I think the other thing to consider is, as modular like infrastructure partners, you can provide a cheaper solution as like via economies of scale. So if you are a really successful modular infrastructure provider, then over time, as you gain market share, you can also provide a cheaper product to your customers, which is a win-win for everybody.
I'll take somewhat of the contrarian view, honestly, and I'll start by saying that Axelar and the majority of interoperability platforms were some of the earliest components of the modular stack. That you can connect and pass messages over an API. It's agnostic to what they use the DA layer, what they decide to do with the different components of a modular stack. But one thing that I've seen in my experience, and specific to DePIN, is that you have some optionality paralysis that's taking place, where teams that are building might not necessarily have the skill set or time to sift through 5 options at 6 different layers of their architecture. And specifically, we see this at the enterprise layer, or trying to onboard non-native Web3 builders who don't necessarily understand the trade-offs between all of these partners. And so it leads me to believe that we might have all the incumbent players here and now, that were built in this last bear market, and now we're going to see some level of consolidation or bundling of products, whereby service providers like a RaaS provider kind of have done the diligence for you. The RaaS provider is your integration or implementation partner, a la the strategy consultants of Web 2, and that they'll have their set of NearDA we think is the best for this reason or for this customer segment, and they'll really kind of guide a modular stack, but not necessarily the level of choice that we're seeing today being made at every level of kind of roll-up that's launching.
Yeah, I think the optionality point is really interesting. I guess the option that's most adopted becomes a standard, and the bundle of solutions will establish primitives that can also become standards. So we're really early in the establishment of these standards and primitives, but definitely the good set of leaders on stage right now. I want to change topics a little bit, and I know each of these projects up here dabbles a little bit in artificial intelligence and AI, which we don't really consider really to be a part of the DePIN tech stack, but it is a module that is gaining a lot of popularity. I know Near and the Graph and Filecoin and maybe even Axelar had some exciting announcements about AI made recently. So this question is more about what are your thoughts about AI as a module on top of blockchain, and maybe share that announcement that you guys have made recently.
I can go first. We actually just did an announcement. So the Graph just recently, one of our core devs, Semiotic Labs, wrote a white paper. It's titled "The Graph as AI Infrastructure," and we're really excited to combine what we've been building for 8 years, which is a decentralized data set, with a lot of these new technologies that have formed in AI. The Graph kind of naturally has been thinking about AI before ChatGPT came out. We made a $10 million plus investment in Semiotic Labs. They have specialty in reinforcement learning as well as data. And so they've actually been thinking about this problem at a research level for a while. And so what you can all read in the white paper is our view of how we can combine the Graph's data as well as our decentralized compute network of indexers, and enable decentralized AI. And so there are two additional data services that are described in this white paper. One is the inference service, and then the second is the agent service. The inference service is something that will allow a use case like somebody has a natural language question about a DEX, say Uniswap, and that they can ask the AI questions about it. It actually dynamically structures the question into SQL, and then that SQL interfaces with the graph and then serves that data back to the user. And so that's just one example. I see it as a primitive example that could definitely translate into DePIN or any other kind of AI plus indexed data use case.
Yeah, well, first, I'm going to say I'm really excited about what you guys are doing there. Second, yeah, like I think that, whether or not you consider AI part of like the DePIN stack, which I would argue it is because there is such a physical infrastructure layer that's needed for it. But it is, it is sort of the biggest new thing that everybody is talking about. And of course, like none of these models work without, without a reliable data structure. And having distributed compute, which I think a lot of us are working on, and a lot of us are working on it in ways that I think complement each other. Filecoin, has a distributed compute network. IO.net is built on top of Filecoin, and we have a team called Bakliao that has built a distributed compute network on top of Filecoin. But I do think it's just like a really exciting space where the need for compute, especially cheap compute, is so real and so acute that you're creating a real market-based reason to get companies to jump into the world of Web3 who might otherwise, be more hesitant.
Yeah, and just to add to Megan, the Filecoin is also building a very large decentralized data set, which includes a different data structure. And there's a partnership opportunity for two protocols to work together in AI to kind of unlock that. And I think the same could probably be said, for a lot of the other major projects, trying to combine data to kind of expand utility.
Yeah, so Near's AI strategy is a little bit more foundational in a sense, just because of who our co-founders are. So Ilya was one of the co-authors of the Attention is All You Need paper, which described the architecture of the transformer model. And then the other co-founder, Alex Skidinov, has actually, in the last 12 to 18 months, was working on building his own foundation model. He's come back to Near now, and so basically the band has got back together again. And a funny footnote about the history of Near is that it started off originally as an AI project. Like the original project URL was near.ai, but then when they started working on the project, they had a hard time paying all of their data labelers, and they were like, let's just build a blockchain to pay the people that are helping us build this thing. So they pivoted to a blockchain project, and now they've come back full circle to AI because the time is right. And so Ilya's vision that he laid out in a blog post last week was he eventually wants there to be user-owned AI. And so instead of having OpenAI or going to Anthropic or going to Google and asking their models for answers, you would have your own agent that you customize and would either live on your machine or live on somewhere else that you could verify using stuff like ZK proofs, right? So where we see this going probably is a little bit different than most other projects, just because we are working on things as fundamental as user-owned AI, and having a seat at Near DA, it's been really interesting because obviously everybody knows that Ilya's cooking AI stuff, but we're also getting AI projects that are being built on other VMs coming from Ethereum that are roll-ups. And because of modularity, they're we could probably use Near DA as a DA layer and somehow use the data that's posted there to interact with AI agents that are on Near. So it's been an interesting, modularity has led to the blurring of boundaries between ecosystems, specifically in this context. And that's just what we've shared so far. But it's obviously a super exciting thing. I think AI honestly has the potential to be more than just a module. It's probably something that's bigger than that. But yeah, it's a shiny new object that everybody's chasing. But we have a bit of an advantage just because of Ilya's personal brand and credibility in that space. So it's been really exciting to like have a front row seat to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short. I think we're in the early stages, but when we think about Axelar being a layer 1 interoperability platform, you have the decentralized verification advantages at the bottom, but another one is the what we're kind of coining programmable interoperability from the fact that we have a smart contract layer. And so you can do really interesting things on top of that. And one of them is we're exploring some use cases for AI. So you can imagine that an AI agent doing any of the things that we're all describing could then actually execute compute on different blockchains based on Axelar's connectivity. So I think that's really, we're only starting to explore those early use cases, but Axelar being the conduit with which you could then execute compute on different blockchains via different wallets and smart contracts is something that's very top of mind for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the DePIN sector, a lot of the AI narrative is around the aggregation of GPUs, rightfully so, but the inference category of running AI on top of data that could exist in multiple databases or across multiple chains, there's like this thing, I think, like the holy triumvirate of technologies where Internet of Things and smart devices is the technology that generates the data, blockchains add trust to the data, and AI can extract value from the data. So I think that's the direction that we're heading in. We're running up on time here, but I want to ask one last kind of lightning question, kind of broad. Doesn't have to be about DePIN, doesn't have to be about modular infra. It could be a meme coin or something. What are you most excited about in crypto for the rest of the year? Let's maybe start with Megan.
Oh, I'm going to sound like a shell because I am most excited about DePIN. Like, I'm excited that this thing that's been going on for a long time has a name and has buzz around it and has people really able to like look at the full stack and leaning into making it.
Awesome.
I'm excited to keep building. Last summer was rough. I've been happy all year. Things are good. We're moving forward.
We up. Yeah.
I think we're really excited about DePIN and RWA space. You can see Deutsche Bank just announced like a second phase of the Project Guardian work that JP Morgan had done. I think that we are starting to see financial institutions that are really interested in figuring out how they can get to real world kind of use of this technology. And I think the role that interoperability will play there is going to be instrumental. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, for me, I think don't underestimate what the approval of an Ethereum ETF is going to do for the rest of the industry. I mean, meme coins have kind of been what have carried the market so far this year, and for better or for worse, that comes with certain connotations, right? I think the Ethereum ETF is going to onboard a lot of people just through financial participation. So look, a lot of people holding the tokens, not necessarily using the underlying network. Those are baby steps, right? But I think the credibility and maybe the getting that stamp of endorsement from institutions that people trust, like reputationally, is going to put a different light on the industry as a whole. So even though it's like not a technology-centric pathway, I do think that people being able to buy like Ethereum through their 401ks or through their like brokerage account is actually like pretty huge. And if you think like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF was like huge. I think an ETF or a general purpose smart contract blockchain is gonna be like in a totally different category. That's my view.
Awesome, guys. Well, let's give a hand to our panelists. Thank you so much for bearing the heat. I think everyone finished their bottle of water or most of it. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.